Hi, Dr. Karma here. This video is going to talk about the 5-paragraph essay, which I actually prefer to call the 3-point thesis. I make this distinction because there's nothing wrong with a paragraph that happens to be 5 paragraphs. If 5 paragraphs says everything that you wanted to say, it's written well, it meets your length requirement, that's fine. The problem I have is when you force yourself to create a 3-point thesis, which means every essay you write has to have that 5-paragraph essay format. Let's talk a little bit more about it. So what is it? Well, this is an image I found on the internet, and you can see you start with generalities, you end with generalities. You've just got 3 body paragraphs to make your point. Who uses this? Well, quite frankly, middle schoolers and high schoolers. This is a really good format for beginning writers, and that's why many of us were taught it when we were beginning writers. The issue is that we don't use this in the real world. Ask yourself when you do your reading, when you're reading your books, when you're reading on the internet, do you ever see this format? I don't. The only time I see it is in beginning writer student papers, and that's probably the only time that you see it too. Now, I actually had a conversation with a middle school teacher once. I said, could you tell your students that they need to be able to do something else? And he said, look, I have to make them use this format because without this format, they wouldn't even have paragraphs. And I said, okay, but could you warn them that this is not the only way they're going to write for the rest of their lives, because they get to my class and then I break their hearts, and that's not what I want to be doing. But I also have to teach you to write well, and so that means we can't use this. Let's talk about some of the problems. First, these are super boring. Just incredibly boring. I know from your first couple sentences what's going to happen. It's formulaic. You have problems too in terms of being able to get into some detail. We'll talk about that in a minute. But part of the problem is that you've decided before you even know what I want, how many paragraphs I'm going to have. So you're saying no matter what she assigns, no matter how long this essay should be, no matter how many pieces of evidence I have, she's getting 5 paragraphs. If she asks me to write a pamphlet version of this paper, no, I'm not going to give her a pamphlet. I'm going to give her a 5-paragraph essay. If she wants me to write my resume, my resume is going to be weird because it's going to be a 5-paragraph essay. We just don't write like that. And so we got to do something else. Let's do some math on this. Sometimes I have my students write very short papers, like just a page. What are you going to be able to do in a page in this format? That's just not going to work well. In college, of course, we very often get up to the 10-page paper. That's 2-page paragraphs. Do you want to write a 2-page introduction? No. Do I want to read the 2-page introduction? Absolutely not. We know it's going to be boring. We know it's going to be bad. We know it's going to be filled with repetition and generalities. This won't work. In grad school, by the way, seminar papers are 25 pages. If you thought 2-page introductions were awful, imagine what would happen with that 5-page introductory paragraph. So what's missing from this form? Well, background information. Say my paper is on a new malaria vaccine. If I had 3 pieces of evidence for why it was superior to the others, you might say, okay, Karma, so use that 5-paragraph essay format, except I can't do all of the background information in my introduction. If I'm writing to you, a lay audience, I have to explain to you what malaria is. I have to talk about the vector that spreads it. I have to talk about how dangerous it is. Malaria, so far, has killed the most humans of everything that's killed humans. I'm going to make that point somewhere to make you understand how important this is. I need to be able to talk to you about what treatments we've had for this, what vaccines we've had for this in the past, and why they didn't work, and therefore we needed the new one. I can't do that in 1 paragraph. I can't do that at all. So that's not going to work. I can't do counter argument. in this format. I need to acknowledge with this new vaccine that it costs too much money to be widely available, or I need to explain why we have problems getting it to the populations that need it, or I need to explain how expensive it is to make, or how there's only one company that makes it and they put the price too high, right? There's all of these things. I need to talk about the potential negative side effects even if I'm saying this thing is good, and I can't do that in this format. If I have more examples, like maybe for my first argument, I actually have 2 examples I can give you. I should not shove those into the same paragraph. If I have a 4th argument and evidence, am I really going to leave it out just so this can be a 5-paragraph essay? What if I have 7? Am I really going to only have 3 reasons because I don't know how to write in a different way? Conversely, what if I only have 2 reasons why this is a good vaccine? Am I really just going to repeat one of them? Because that's what people end up doing. They just take a synonym and they restate it again, and this insults their audience completely. Don't insult your audience. And finally, we just don't have nuance here. There isn't room for that. There isn't room for alternative ideas and really talking about things in our grown-up adult way that we need to do it. Let's talk about that introduction. Do not start with a generality in a paper in my classes. Just the end. This is called the "since the dawn of time" sentence. I'm never going to ask you to explain something since the dawn of time itself. And it would be extra stupid of me to say, I want you to talk about something since the dawn of time, but no more than 5 paragraphs, please. A lot of times what students do is they have a generality that doesn't make sense. Sometimes they're factually inaccurate. I had a student who said, since the Jurassic era, humans have blah, 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 blah. I don't remember what the rest of the sentence was because I got distracted by just that 5th word there because there were no humans in the Jurassic era. Despite what the Flintstones have told you, dinosaurs and people lived at different times. That's why it's called Jurassic Park, because it's the park with the dinosaurs, because that was their time. His paper, this student, was not about dinosaurs. It was not about cavemen. It was not about how time passes. It was about just something that was happening in our society. And so to start this way, I mean, I had to correct him on facts. He got a fact wrong in the first sentence. I shouldn't have to do that in your paper. Another student, and this confused me even more, said, since before mankind, society has divided itself into different social classes. Let's think about that. Since before we existed, we did something. I really had to think about that. And finally, what I wrote in the margins was, with a time machine? And then I started thinking, instead of about the student paper, about if we had used time travel for that and how that's a terrible way to use time travel, because obviously when you use time travel to go kill Hitler. Everybody knows that. I should not be thinking about time travel and its usage in your paper about social class. That's just not what should happen. And that would be a terrible use of time travel. Even worse, I think, than this. This cartoon, by the way, is by my friend Lonnie Millsap. If you want more of these cartoons, they're at lonniemillsap.com. Let's talk about that conclusion. I don't want you to tell me your thesis again. I do not want you to summarize what you've already said, and I sure as hell don't want you to generalize. The where to from here on this chart, that's okay, actually, but that other stuff, no. In a short paper, and you are only writing what I consider to be short papers for me, I'm going to read this in one sitting. I just read your introduction a few minutes ago. It insults me to give it to me again. Maybe when I'm older, like I look like this instead of looking like me, sure, because, I won't remember what you said a few paragraphs ago, but that's not what's going on here. If you give me the introduction again, I double dog dare you to just write this instead. You would never put that on a paper. So don't make me go read your introduction again by putting your introduction again at the conclusion. Okay, so what do we do? I know that for some of you watching this video right now, what I'm saying is really scary because you've only written in this one format, and I know that, and I'm not trying to be scary. I'm really not. But we got to take the training rules off, the wheels off, because we are, writing in a more grown-up way. And so here's what I want you to do a better job this quarter. 1, read all of the handouts. I have handouts on how to create a single unified awesome thesis. I have handouts about how to organize that information in your body paragraphs. I have a handout that tells you how to do awesome introductions and conclusions, and so we're just going to do those things. But that does mean you got to read them, because sometimes my students don't read them and then they give me terrible introductions and they organize badly and they have terrible transitions, and then they say, oh, but my middle school teacher, but your middle school teacher also told you that 5-paragraph essay works. By the way, I keep talking about this as if every middle school teacher does it. They do not. I had an amazing middle school writing teacher who did not make us write in this format. I had him for 2 years, and I thanked him in my master's thesis when I got that degree, because I know part of my success has been through what he did. So shout out to Mr. Whitney. I want you to look at how our student and professional examples do this, how they have just one point to make. They have different lengths of body paragraphs and different amounts, and they have different ways of introducing and different ways of concluding, and we're going to see all that. Part of this is just accepting that writing is hard. If the 5-paragraph essay was all you needed to do, you wouldn't have to be in this class, because most people mastered that in middle school or high school or both. This class exists because writing is difficult, because there are a multitude of ways to write a really good essay on any given topic. There's also a multitude of ways to screw it up. If it were easy, we wouldn't have this. Some students have asked me, okay, Karma, so I can't write a 5-paragraph essay. What is the formula to use? There isn't a formula to use. If there were, you would have noticed already. If we all used a magic 7-paragraph formula, you would have noticed by now that everything you ever read was written in 7 paragraphs, all doing the same thing, but that's just not how it is. I want you to ask me questions. If any of this has been confusing, this is us talking about it, you and I. And I want you to draft your essays early enough to get feedback from me and from the tutors on how you're developing that thesis, how you're formulating your way through the essay. All right. This has been Dr. Karma. Thank you for putting up with me complaining about the 5-paragraph essay.